Welcome to Rooted and Reaching, a podcast about startups and entrepreneurs in the South Bend Elkhart region of Indiana. My name is Bethany Hartley.
And I'm Nick Kuhn. Today, I'll be speaking with Kevin Craig from Tessellated. He'll be sharing a bit about his journey and his process of creating a new type of graphene to make materials we're familiar with stronger and lighter. We hope you enjoy. Well, we're here today with Kevin Craig from Tessellated. Kevin, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks. It's great to be here.
I'm looking forward to talking with you and learning more.
Yeah.
Cool. So we met a couple years ago. We were at the Idea Center in Notre Dame. We kind of walked around, bumped into each other, and you were interested in being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And here you are.
Yes, it happened.
That's awesome. What I'd love to do is just kind of rewind the clock a little bit and just start from your backstory and figure out, and then we can kind of make our way to where you're at today. So where'd you grow up? What was that like? And kind of what was some fond memories of your childhood?
Yeah. So I grew up about 5 hours from here in post-industrial Rust Belt and tri-state area of West Virginia, Ohio, Pennsylvania. And, 30 years ago, the job situation was grow up, work in the steel mill, go off to college, or join the military. Wasn't really interested in college or working in steel, so I went off to the military. And 27 years later, retired and settled here. But during that time, I initially got paid to fix airplanes. And when you get really good at something, they put you in charge. So I watched people fix airplanes after that. So it's even far less entertaining than you'd imagine. And so for the last 12 years I was in the Air Force, I was in the positions that you would, in the civilian world, call C-suite. So we were running units from 100 to 1,000 deployed and at home. And so largely it was just a lot of, aircraft maintenance and intel collection and processing, those type of jobs.
So you're in the Air Force. Is there a reason you chose that branch?
I chose the Air Force, not to make fun of anyone, but my dad told me I couldn't join the Marines or Army, and Navy was an option. But I heard my granddad's World War II stories, and so Air Force was the only place to go.
Process of elimination.
Pretty much, yeah.
Great. So were you mechanical by nature? Did you enjoy the process of learning that, or did you already kind of bring that into your service there?
Yeah, I always had an inclination towards electronics, so I was electronic maintenance, and so what we worked on initially was component level repair. So a lot of troubleshooting, which is something I tend to like, and on large computer systems, in the back of an airplane, collecting intel was just by nature interesting. And in that 27 years, I spent 17 years overseas, and so that kept me, engaged, knowing that every single day when you did your job properly, it was a good mission, accomplishment feeling.
Yeah. What were some interesting takeaways from your time in the military? Whether it's fun or a place you traveled, or just maybe life lessons?
Yeah, one of the big things I didn't realize I took away, but somebody kind of summed it up in a conversation I had with a retired Chicago cop. I asked that person if they ever miss being part of the force. And he said, I miss the clowns, but I don't miss the circus. And I would say the same about the military. The people that I was able to serve with were incredible. I don't know that I miss, the things about the Air Force and some of the, things that aren't fun. But the takeaway was, in any organization, it's about the people. And that really kind of translates well to the civilian world and starting a new company, to be sure.
Interesting. Cool. So you served for 27 years.
Yeah.
And then we met at some point after that. So how did you get from, repairing airplanes and being overseas and deployed different places to the Idea Center?
Yeah. So it was exactly the way I planned it. I taught high school at Washington High School, prior to the West Side, for a year, and taught junior OTC. So I was teaching high school students about leadership and community. And they closed the program, so with some advice from a VA counselor, I went back and got an MBA. And I did that at Notre Dame in the executive program. During that time, I actually worked at the Idea Center doing analysis on startups. And I didn't know about the business world. And so the MBA was really a way to translate the things I knew about the military into civilian words. I learned things like burn rate. I always thought that was how fast you can be at afterburner in an F-16 and still get home safely. But apparently it means that, when you go find a new job. And so it was a great time to do that. And then in the practical sense, I was looking at startups in the community and making an assessment and recommending that to the Idea Center for, kind of go, no go looks. But I really got it in my blood that this was something that, military veterans we're not often able to replace what we did in the military. But this is something that got me out of bed and got me fired up and excited about serving again in a new capacity.
Fascinating. So a lot of times I work with entrepreneurs that have an idea. They come to me and they say, hey, I figured this out. And I have to take a look at that opportunity and the market size, and then the person, and say, are you the right person for this? Maybe there's a mismatch. Maybe it's a perfect match. You, on the other hand, found some technology that was in the process of being developed and commercialized. Can you talk a little bit about what that means to graft yourself into a moving opportunity?
Yes, that was very interesting. I don't have a material science background. And the company I'm working on now is a material science, so making a high-strength polymer film. And trying to understand quickly what the thing is in layman's terms, and then where it finds its way in the world. And what I like about that is there aren't many books on the subject of how to scale something from the lab into a consumer good or for use in the military. So there's a lot of troubleshooting and figure things out. Another translation from the military I learned was military veterans have the same skill set as entrepreneurs. And that skill set generally is very good with ambiguity, being able to be decisive in the face of imperfect information, and the ability to get punched in the face and keep moving forward. And if you talk to any entrepreneurs, that's pretty much the daily life, right? It's about small wins and lots of losses. And so tabulating those in a way that, keeps you going every day.
That's great advice for any entrepreneur. Get punched in the face, get back up, because it's going to happen.
It does.
And hopefully you learn to duck or to use the top of your head so when it doesn't hurt as much.
That's called de-risking, as I understand it.
All the terms are coming back now. Excellent. So let's talk a little bit about graphene. Can you describe that material? What is it?
So graphene is a single layer of carbon. And so most of us understand when you write with a pencil, it's graphite. And as you make a line across the paper, you're actually exfoliating or shearing off a little bit of that graphite into single layers of carbon. If you can get it down to single layers of carbon, it's first of all very, very small and very, very light. If I bought a spoonful of graphene and kind of threw it in the air, it would float. So it's extremely light. But what it does is it adds, in our case, thermal conductivity and extreme strength to something that is generally not very strong.
So what can it do better than something is doing right now?
So what it does is that thing. So in our case, it gives us a structure to align polymer film on top of. And so in the absence of that, plastic, if you pull it and it gets kind of strong and then it breaks. This allows us that's a simplistic version of that, but in a very more complex way, it gives us the ability to take all of those natural organic capabilities of the plastic and go beyond that using graphene as a kind of a lattice.
Got it. So you have this new technology, material science technology. It's coming from Notre Dame, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right? Okay, yeah. So it's from a lab.
Yes.
And it's not on the shelf. No one's going to go buy this yet.
No.
And there's a process you need to go through to what's called commercialize this,
yes.
right? To bring it to market.
Mm-hmm.
And we were chatting a little bit earlier about some of the programs that you've been leveraging, including one that's had a good acronym, the SBIR, the Small Business Innovation Research Grant. And can you tell us a little bit about how the government assists entrepreneurs and innovative technology?
Yeah, so the program is new to me over the last few years. And basically the intent is that the government can't fully fund all of its research needs, anyway from decarbonization to defense needs to health things. So they have a pot of money called SBIR, STTR, and that money is given to small businesses who are by nature agile and innovative to solve very specific problems for the government. And the idea is that those small businesses make a product that solves a government problem. But also every requirement is we have to address how that has a dual use purpose. So how does the tax dollar see benefit from their tax monies being used in this way? And so when that money comes in, we employ people. We just hired 2 people this month based on the grants and contracts we've received in that way. So if you look at economic development, we're hiring people Eventually, we may build a facility here to manufacture this material. All of those on the back of these grants and contracts.
Does that mean that part of the government, whether it's the Air Force or Navy or some other form, maybe the Department of Transportation, will be utilizing the graphene at some point?
Yeah. So the idea is, for instance, the Army is interested in transparent ballistic material, and so the idea is that you would start with some basic research, which we've done. And then the next phase would be to build out a prototype and prove that your technology works in application. Imagining that being successful, the Army then can turn on a contract vehicle to be a customer of that material. And at the same time, how do you get it into the hands of civilians?
Right. So you have two paths
Yes.
to sell to. One would potentially be the military, the other would be, or the government. Excellent. How long does this process take to go from the lab to something usable and integrated into materials of this ballistic material you mentioned?
Yeah. So understanding that research takes time. So this has been a development for at least the last 5 or 6 years. So the way that looks like is a researcher is funded to do research. They find something, they bring it to a commercialization in a university. That's where they do the analytic work I used to do is there something here? Should we protect it with a patent? And if so, should we spin out a company to bring it to life? And so that process can take a decade or more. In our case, the technology's been in the hands of the university for several years. I've been employed for a year this February. And so the hope is that we can understand what manufacturing looks like this year and have a product in hand, in a year or so.
Excellent. Zooming out a little bit, you've walked the entrepreneur journey, kind of envisioned it. You got your MBA, you got the postgraduate work done, and you kind of worked into this role and have learned a lot. How would you pass that forward? What encouragement or advice would you tell an aspiring entrepreneur about what you've learned, and some advice, anything that would be helpful for them?
I would say the first thing is properly tabulate wins and losses. 2 examples. When I was in the military, I had all the stripes, and people would walk in and go, "Oh, this person must have been a success." But what I would tell them is my win-loss record. The Air Force actually told me no more than it told me yes on promotion. So really, I had a losing record, but ultimately I was successful. Most of us have a Roku in our house, and Roku is the Japanese word for 6. The reason the founder named it 6 is because it was a 6 startup. So really, if you write down his win-loss record, he's 1 in 5 on startups. So he's a loser, but he's also a billionaire and has impacted literally millions of people. So understanding what success is, and that you're going to take a lot more L's than dubs. And sometimes success means just more hard work. So even when you get a win, cheer a little bit and get back at it.
Yeah. So for every punch in the face, you need 4 punches in the face for 1 handshake.
It's a good ratio I'd go from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Kevin, thanks for being on the podcast. This has been great to get to know you a little bit better, hear about Tessellated and what you're bringing to market.
Yeah.
Appreciate your service.
Yeah. Thank you so much.